I want to play you this, okay? This is the Luxembourg manager, Luke Holtz, and his translator. He wasn't happy with the conduct of the Irish management team last night. Wouldn't exactly say why. Have a look.
Coach wants to say to them that he's very disappointed about the behavior of the staff of Ireland. This evening they came and made played the big guys because they were winning. In Ireland, where we were winning, they immediately disappeared in the dressing rooms, and we didn't went to them and made them ridiculous. But they tried to do that this evening after the match, and that's not very fair play and very disappointing. So we are not used of British teams. Normally they should not behave like that.
Just to start, do you realise that Ireland is not a British team? And secondly, what in particular happened tonight?
Some of teams from the island.
Different place. But secondly, do you realise what specifically happened tonight?
No, we should have. No.
It's like saying Luxembourg in Belgium.
No, everything is said about that.
Sorry, so what, can we clarify what happened?
No, they behaved very unsportive after the match. And
did they not shake your hand, or was there what specific
no, they
act was unsportsmanlike?
How to say it they did not behave as sportsmen. Okay.
Can you be specific?
No, that's enough to the question. Next question, please.
It sounds like an excuse.
Not an excuse. It's a fact that
Well, if it's not an excuse, tell us what happened.
It's a constatation. Yeah.
Sorry, did Kenny shake your hand after the match?
Well, very handshake. Okay. Okay, next question, please. Yeah.
Okay, you brought it.
You have another question?
No, I just said you brought this up.
Yeah.
We're following up on it.
Wow.
That was hilarious.
That was class.
The poor old interpreter was like, am I answering the questions
Oh,
here?
no.
Because they just kept lashing it back at him like, what are you saying? Oh my God.
The interpreter seemed to have
He did wear probably the finest
the coat.
I've ever seen anywhere. It was just
sheepskin.
I was almost
Weird.
I was willing them, like, if they were playing anyone else, to have a good performance on the night.
I wish he'd rocked up to the post-match press conference. Enda's with us, I think. Enda, good morning.
Yeah.
Well, you were there for that. What was that like?
I was. It was pretty hilarious. It was a weird press conference. It was very tense from the very get-go. Luke Holtz came out. He was not a happy man at the end of the game. First off, the first question, he blamed the referee. He said that the referee would not allow them to win the game because, firstly, Shane Duffy was offside for his goal. He feels that Luxembourg should have had a penalty somewhere. Not sure where he got that.
That was the handball in the first half.
He was, it must have been that. And then he was disappointed with the goal that was disallowed as well. He said that should not have been disallowed. Secondly, in the press conference, he then went on to throw more shade at Ireland, saying that there's not much justice in the world of football, but there is some justice in Portugal finishing second in the group after playing a B team against Ireland on Thursday night. And then that happened. I guess the funniest part of that was probably the back and forth with the Irish journalists, who almost seemed to be defending the pride of the Irish nation in the fact that Luke Holtz did not know that Ireland was not part of Britain. I think his British football comments actually came from a place where he actually genuinely thought that Ireland was still part of Britain.
No.
To which one of the Irish journalists said, it's like saying that Luxembourg is part of Belgium.
That sounded like Gavin Cumsky.
Yes, I believe it was Gavin Cumsky.
I don't think I think, was it not the translator who was like, same part of the world, kind of, those islands? Was he not trying to do he must have had one of those British school atlases that had British Isles over this whole kind of part.
Yeah, I presume there was something like that, yeah.
All joking aside, though, we are, this is the thing, and we are trying. This is the time where we're moving away from being the basically another leg of the British football system, where all our players went over there. This is now changing, and we're sending players to the continent, and maybe we're finally playing like a team that's developing its own identity here.
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole thing about British football is almost an outdated concept in general, Johnny, because I mean, what is British football since the 1990s? It's not lump it up to the tall forward to knock it down. England have not played that style of football for at least a decade, if not more.
They always had a plan B
Scotland.
with Crouchy, though. That was there was always a bang it forward, and the centre backs would always, when they were chasing the World Cup round of last 16 or trying to get out of a group desperately and flailing about, they would always lump it up to the last 5 minutes. But I think you're right. English football is now actually a bunch of small, diminutive forwards who find pockets of space and kill you.
Yeah, and if you look at the England team, I mean, it's got some of the best number 10s and attacking midfielders in the world. They've got, Jack Grealish, Mason Mount, Phil Foden. All these players are really talented footballing players. And granted, Gareth Southgate isn't the greatest tactician in the world or play Pep Guardiola style football, but I mean, they've got a really good team coming along there. But I guess if you're talking about the Irish side, last night they didn't really play all that well, and for a large part of the game you're almost thinking to yourself, well, maybe Luke Holtz was right here, because they were going long a bit more. But Stephen Kenny clarified after the game that it was a tactic to try get in behind them, because last time when Luxembourg beat Ireland, they were too obsessed with trying to play out from back. They got caught in the ball too many times. The Luxembourg press is quite good. I was like in the game last night in the first half, first 10-15 minutes, Ireland could barely get out of their final third, because Luxembourg, they were just pressing high. They were really good at it as well. So they had to go long to Benny. They had to go long to Adamina, and it didn't really stick. It wasn't until Ireland moved away from that in the second half and started to get on the ball more, started to compress and then fire out to the wings, that they started to really get some good advantage and good possession and start creating chances against that Luxembourg side.
He might have been on the button when he said, like, in the game in Dublin, and I don't know if many of us remember exactly what went on after the game there, but maybe he felt that their shock 1-0 win, which was really the low point for Irish football for some time, or certainly of this campaign, maybe he felt that Kenny and the lads didn't kind of embrace him enough, or didn't, they weren't nice enough after the game. But it's interesting to think back to that, Enda, because I was reading recently that Stephen Kenny apparently after the press conference was over that night was kind of just almost looking into the distance in the whilst all the journalists had gone, and it was like that was my one moment in this campaign where I remember as they were going off the pitch, I was really worried as to what Stephen Kenny would be like in the dressing room afterwards, because I didn't know what he could say to make that any better.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, just to bring it back to the Luke Holtz stuff, a Luxembourg journalist explained to the Irish press that essentially what Luke Holtz was trying to say was, in Ireland, when Luxembourg won, they won graciously. They shook everyone's hand. And Ireland, he basically said Ireland just retreated to the dressing room straight after the game, whereas down in Luxembourg, when Ireland won, Ireland were out in the pitch celebrating, and Stephen Kenny was giving it the big one. That was essentially the crux of his point. But the British comments did get under Stephen Kenny's skin. But he even said in the press conference afterwards that he spoke to the players about it. And you just played the clip earlier on where he lists off an incredible list of names, it has to be said, of Irish players that were downgraded by the Luke Holtz comments.
Where did he get Mick McCarthy from?
Very specifically, I would say very specifically picked, Johnny. There's
Robbie Keane being mentioned, you can say that
Liam
Robbie
Brady.
Keane is like that. Robbie Keane is 100% tactical, but at the same time he was one of our better players. Liam Brady, absolutely. Mick McCarthy.
Honestly, if Martin O'Neill wasn't in there at one point in time, even though he didn't play for Ireland, I wouldn't have been surprised. It was Paul McGrath, it was Liam Brady, it was Mick McCarthy, it was Robbie Keane, and there was others along the way.
He didn't mention Richard Dunn. Richard Dunn would have been the full house.
Yes.
Exactly. Richard Dunn would have been the absolute, the cherry on top of that list of Irish players. But Stephen Kenny was clearly annoyed by that comment. He was clearly frustrated by it. He mentioned it to the players in the dressing room, and
we played that clip earlier on where he was throwing shade on the sports psychology of the Luxembourg manager.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and whether or not that played into the Irish players or not, I don't know. Benny and Josh Cullen were basically saying that, they didn't need that to get motivated for this game, that they have their own internal motivations for it.
Yeah,
And
I don't think I'd say the players are less interested in that in some ways than it's definitely Kenny's thing from the start, and it goes to the Andy Farrell quote earlier on about we are skillful. We are skillful. Yeah. We can believe in ourselves. We are skillful, and I look. That's why I think this job is important. That's why I think Kenny is actually going to be a very important figure in the history of Irish football. If it fails, it's going to be very difficult for somebody else in that system to come and get that gig again. That's my point on that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, Ger. OTB AM have Kelly Harrington on later on the show. She is one of 2 Irish female boxers in Katie Taylor, who will go down as 2 of the best female boxers of all time. Jason Quigley is fighting for a world title later on this month. 2 Irish players and an Irish captain in the European team of the Ryder Cup this year. Irish rugby have just beaten the All Blacks. We have talent within this country. And why can we say that all these sports that we've thrived in across the world, we can't do that with the most participated sport in the country? We can do it because we do have the talent. And I think more than just, I don't want to overblow what the performance was last night. It wasn't a good performance for 60 minutes of the game, but moreover, it's about the pride within the jersey that Stephen Kenny is bringing back, because Trapattoni did something to the psyche of this nation when it came to the football. And it was him that started that seed that Irish players cannot and should not try to play football.
Liam Brady was in the
trying to
dressing room.
change that.
Liam Brady was in that dressing room for a long period of time.
Yeah.
He
Exactly,
bore witness to it.
yeah.
And then when he stopped being in the dressing room, he went on the telly and defended Trapattoni and defended the tactics and defended how we were playing. After really, really bad performances, Brady would be like, nothing to do with the manager, so it's interesting to see how this how the turntables have turned. What's
the public moved away from that as well. I don't think you can get away with that anymore. You can't on the one level watch Ireland beat New Zealand and play unbelievable rugby and then expect to have the same grow for the Irish team if they're trying to get a 0-0 draw by putting their backs to the wall in international football. But I tell you what, I mean, the boy Holtz has fairly gotten the Irish journalists going. That was so passionate.
Yeah, it was great.
Enda's we're better than this. It's almost like all the Irish journalists at the press conference got together and were like, this is, we're representing our country here. We're gonna call you Mr. Interpreter.
Well, you see, just one last point on the pride side of things. There's a good documentary that's just dropped on Copa 90. They do documentaries, and they spent the summer with the Scottish fans for the Euros last year or 2 years ago. No, it was last year, 2021. Sorry. And essentially, Scotland are on a different journey because Steve Clarke is a pragmatist who doesn't play nice football, but he's getting results. But what he did as well was restore pride in the Scottish jersey. What he did was bring fans back who had stopped watching Scotland altogether because they suddenly had a team that were getting results, that were winning, and that they could be proud about again. And I think there's a lot of parallels with this Irish side that I know people who don't watch Ireland anymore because it was just so dreadful to watch over the last 10 years. And they're starting to watch it again. Friends of mine who don't watch the League of Ireland, didn't really know who Stephen Kenny is, didn't know what he was going to do, have always repeatedly been texting throughout this campaign into the group chats. Ireland are playing really well here. Even if the result didn't follow, there's an Ireland are playing really well here in a shocked way. So if that continues over the next couple of months, that's all I want. Ireland aren't going to win the World Cup. They're not going to win the Euros.
Hang on now.
What was
They
stop,
can
don't
go
limit
out
yourself,
and
Enda.
be
Come on.
a good competitive side.
You're teaching us how to dream here. What was the gossip about the contract? Soon or is Liam Brady? Has he got? Is somebody tipping Brady off that actually it might be 6 months before we get that deal done?
No. Well, one of the funniest parts of the contract conversation was when Josh Cullen was in front of the media and he was asked about the contract situation. He said, "Well, I haven't been asked specifically myself by someone in the FAI whether I want Stephen Kenny to stay on, but he does want Stephen Kenny to stay on. The whole squad wants Stephen Kenny to stay on. The word seems to be that it's going to be the end of the month, regardless of the end of the campaign. It's probably going to be that November meeting, which is coming in. I think it's the 23rd of November. This month is when the decision is going to be made. But all the signs seem to be that it's going to be a Stephen Kenny new deal to take us into the Euro campaign.
All right, good stuff, Enda. Thanks very much. Safe home. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
It's Enda on his way back from Luxembourg.